Stephanie, a lot of people have suggested since the election in talking about this is don't take the bait every day. If something is tweeted out, if an outrageous statement is made, don't set your hair on fire, to use words that Mika said earlier, but focus on the Constitution, norms and institutions. Right now we're talking about advise and consent. And I know you've talked about that as well.
Mm-hmm. Joe, it's all just about, covering the hell out of this administration, right? Donald Trump obviously won the election. That does not mean he's going to get a free pass to do exactly what he wants and the media not to actively cover him. We're going to cover him every day. But as far as what we're covering, even human nature, right? The majority of things we panic about, 80% of them don't happen. So as it relates to the cabinet picks, we should focus on all of them. Focus on what they did with it, what they have done in the past, what they pledged to do now, and that'll help us understand what they could potentially do in the future. And that's super important to our viewers, right? Right now, we know that the Trump administration is looking to cut an enormous amount of money out of the federal budget. In theory, that's a great idea. Americans want excess. They want the fat cut out. But they also deserve to know, if Dr. Oz is overseeing Medicare and Medicaid, what could that mean for them, right? If the Department of Education goes away, there are tens of millions of families whose children are part of special ed programs. They need to know what that means.
You brought up two great points here because it cuts both ways. Department of Education. If you cut Department of Education, and let me say, when I was in Congress a long time ago, I said do just that, send all the money to the states, to the localities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you look at it, who are the people that are going to be hurt the most if you cut the Department of Education? Red state America. The people, in fact, who voted for Donald Trump by the highest percentages will most likely be hurt the most. And so talk about that and talk about again how some of these things could actually backfire against the very people who voted for Donald Trump.
Without a doubt. And that's why we have to pay very close attention to what they're actually going to do. Because the average American out there, everybody at this table could say, man, the government's too big, it's too fat, it has to clean it up. But what they are actually going to do is hugely important. And the American people deserve to understand that, right? They vote, more than 50% of the country voted against the quote unquote status quo. So the question is what they're getting. And the question for Democrats, when you're universally just sort of defending our institutions and defending the status quo, people don't like that either because they want to know how can we make things smarter, stronger, better. Donald Trump has claimed we're going to clean things up and do that. Well, let's see that happen and what it actually looks like. And instead of just, us wringing our hands saying these people are bad, let's show our viewers, let's show our readers what they're doing and how it hurts them.
Chris, it's very interesting. Really quick, I just have to say also about Dr. Oz. These picks, if you look at Bobby Kennedy Jr., we had a Republican on Mike Lawler who's going to be running for governor most likely in a couple of years, attacking RFK for being too liberal. You look at a lot of his issues, really. Dr. Oz, fascinating, actually supported Medicare for all before Kamala Harris. And in fact, her plan, as I think it was the New York Times this morning or the Washington Post said, actually her plan borrowed much from Dr. Oz's Medicare for all plan. So again, when you're just looking to disrupt, you never know exactly what you're going to get. But Chris, I wanted you to talk about what I've been talking about the past couple of days, but you're so much smarter. You've been there so much longer. You understand this. Those senators, they've been to the rodeo. They've been to the rodeo for years and years and years. And I hate to repeat it, but if people just waking up on the West Coast haven't heard me say this 87 times, a lot of them remember when LBJ won in 64, and that was the end of the Republican Party. The Republican Party comes back in 66, and the Reagan Revolution is launched. They remember Reagan winning 84 states, 49 states in 84. They remember in 86, Democrats taking back control of the Senate. I could play this out over the next 30 years. Talk about those senators, how they understand elections are to be respected, but there's always this kind of pull. There's always Susan Collins is already thinking about her election in a very blue state 2 years from now.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I think they realize if you're a Senate majority of, say, 53 seats, which is a pretty good majority, you know that you'll be back to 48 or 47 again in a couple of years, and you're going to know you'll want the filibuster. That's why they hang on to the filibuster, because that guarantees the rights of all senators to continue to debate and to fight issues out for 60 votes. But I want to tell you something. You said John Cornyn a minute ago. John Cornyn came in second in the leadership vote in the United States Senate. It wasn't Rick Scott. He wasn't even in the running. He was a MAGA guy. He wasn't even considered by the United States Senate, except by a few people like Cruz in Texas. The real fight was among senators who want to protect the rights of senators, the right to advise and consent. They voted on Thune. They almost voted for Cornyn, but they went to Thune because he's a real institutionalist. He's in there with Mitch McConnell. He wants the filibuster, but he also wants the power to advise and consent. I'm telling you, watch Thune. He's very interesting. He's a real U.S. senator, not a MAGA guy, a real U.S. senator with a lot of character. And I think he's going to show this president that on a matter like Matt Gaetz, where the evidence will pile up, I think, beginning today when the Ethics Committee agrees to let it out, so much evidence that the president's going to have to pull back. The evidence is going to turn against Trump in this appointment, especially Matt Gaetz. It's an awful idea to put him on Meet the Press or any Sunday show and say, here's the Attorney General of the United States. Here he is. Look at him. Take a look at this guy. And then they'll tell a story about who he was and how he got to be picked and what he had running against him when he was nominated. This is an awful picture. That one right there, to put on television and say, this is your Attorney General who's going to make sure that all the laws are faithfully employed. Is he?
Well,
is he the guy to do that? No.
Well, so Chris Matthews, former staffer for Tip O'Neill and Democrat for much of his life, is saying that. But Steph, what's so fascinating is that's what Republican senators are saying. That's what Republican House members who work. That's what Republican House members who worked with him are saying. That's what the New York Post editorial page is saying. That's what Republicans are saying on the Hill right now.
Joe, you know this better than we do. Forget Matt Gaetz's even policy history. Forget his sort of sordid track record. Lots of Republicans on the Hill, and I say this carefully, hate his guts. They don't like the guy. They're not his friend. They don't think he's nice to work with. They don't think he's an honest broker. And, you know, half the battle when you want to get a job from your potential employer, it's, do I like this person? Do I want to sit with them? Do I want to work with them? Matt Gaetz has not made a lot of friends, and it's interesting that Donald Trump, you know, a week ago, we all thought, oh, Gaetz is going to be Trump's sacrificial lamb. He's going to put Gaetz out there knowing Gaetz won't get confirmed. It'll distract Republicans in the Senate, and then they'll slide Tulsi Gabbard through. But the fact that Trump is doubling down, the fact that Elon Musk is out there saying this guy's got a spine of steel and he's, you know, got contempt in his heart, that's not going to serve the American people. And again, the American people did vote for Donald Trump because they said they wanted some sort of change, but they did not give him a blank check to actually completely go off. And if he does, what a missed opportunity, because he has the opportunity. While the country has said we're sliding, we're shifting to the right, he has the opportunity to look to the center and say, great, let me capture all and do something here. And if he goes down the lane of Matt Gaetz, I mean, he's falling to his worst tendencies, and that's only going to kill him.
All right, Chris Matthews, thank you so much. And Stephanie Ruhle will be watching the 11th hour weeknights at 11 p.m. Eastern right here on MSNBC. We appreciate it.